I love Xenoblade. For those new to the channel, that may come as a bit of a surprise, nay, a shock to you. But it's a series near and dear to my heart, one that I've talked about extensively on this channel and will continue to do so. I just simply love it. And after being a fan of Xenoblade 2 since right around launch time, and even playing Xenoblade X back in like 2015 or so, it warms the cockles of my heart, not that kind, to see Xenoblade come into the spotlight a bit and get its like time in the spotlight, if that makes sense. Recently, Nintendo had a quarterly report, where they essentially talked about how much money they've made. Or it was something along those lines. Look, I'm no money nerd, I'll be honest with you. But I believe we also have updated sales figures for Xenoblade Chronicles. Or at least like semi-updated, right? So Xenoblade 2 is a little shy of 3 million, sitting about 300,000 shy of 3 million, whereas Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition and Xenoblade 3 are about 100,000 away from 2 million. This is a massive, massive accomplishment for the series as a whole. Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 are all seeing success, not just one-off performances, with a little bit of an outlier from Xenoblade 2 that we'll get into later. And it is, of my opinion, and maybe I'm biased, right? I love Xenoblade, I'll be honest with you. I feel like when it comes to the face of the RPG for Nintendo, it's Xenoblade. You can make an argument that it's Zelda. And if we want to get technical, like, yeah, sure, technically, yeah. Especially if we're talking about Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. But those games are, like, so widely popular. If we're talking about, like, the next one, and the one that probably falls more in line with traditional RPGs, and especially JRPGs, it's Xenoblade Chronicles in my mind. Xeno, as an entire series, has struggled throughout the years, trying to find a home and being stable and successful with its formula. From the times of Xenogears and the PlayStation 1 to the Xenosaga trilogy that would eventually follow, Takahashi and co. have really struggled to find a place to belong. And whereas they maybe ask themselves, where do we belong? That's a Xenoblade reference for you all out there. They have seemingly found one in Nintendo on the Switch. Now, while I would love to see a massive power spike in the next Nintendo console so we can see Xenoblade games in higher resolutions and higher frame rates, I would love that personally. I'd play the entire series again just for the prospect of playing it at 60 FPS. Xenoblade is quickly becoming the series that could. Now, why is it? Well, for a number of reasons in my opinion. One, it's really good. It's always been kind of held back from gaining mainstream popularity for a couple of reasons. It is a long game, and that will be off-putting to a lot of people, but it's not like long games can't find success, right? Persona. But also, some of the games tend to start kinda slow, especially when it comes to the gameplay department. And the gameplay is especially a bit of a sore spot for a lot of people. It can be understandably off-putting for a lot of people. I can't blame someone who, after playing like 30 hours of Xenoblade 2, they just don't like the combat, even though they have not been exposed to some of the best mechanics of the combat. It just simply takes too long to get going. But I find it fascinating that despite all these issues that we can all agree are kind of issues to try and gain mainstream appeal, Xenoblade is still trending upwards, finding its spot and where it belongs, carving out a little name for itself, finding multiple representatives in Smash Bros. It is quickly on the up and up, and honestly just hasn't missed. Like, the one argument against it in recent years, really, is maybe that Future Redeemed is a bit short. And if that's your main critique, or like the biggest critique that people on the whole can levy at you, you're doing pretty damn well. Now, I've talked before about what I think Xenoblade Chronicles can do to gain even more popularity in the future, and that's mainly shoring up the beginning of the game and making the beginning far more mechanically interesting, alongside introducing actual boss mechanics. I feel like it's apt to take a moment in time to just appreciate what Xenoblade is, what it has been, and what it can become. To me, for the longest time, Xenoblade has felt like a series with endless potential, just waiting to be set forth upon the world. It's waiting for that singular spark, that moment in time, for it to truly grasp onto it and take it to the moon. And it feels like we're on the cusp of that moment. I think Xenoblade 4, or at least the next main Xenoblade game, because I think I'll have one more release before 4 comes out, is that jumping off moment for the series, where it may either stagnate or blossom into truly something special, even more so than it already is. More eyes on Xenoblade as an IP than ever before. When it comes to the titular RPGs for Nintendo, Xenoblade is arguably number one, unless we want to count Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which, I mean, yeah, like, sure, but if we're talking more traditional RPGs, and especially JRPGs, or at least what a lot of people assume those types of games to be, Xenoblade is kind of the face of that idea and that genre for Nintendo. And I don't imagine that will fade into the spotlight. I don't see Xenoblade stopping. And if you listened to the interviews Takahashi has done since Xenoblade 3 came out, this feels like the beginning. This wasn't a book closing, this was a chapter turning, with a new one following right behind it. And I think there's a couple of reasons why Xenoblade has taken off like it has in the last few years. I think one is Xenoblade 2. Xenoblade 2 was kind of like lightning in a bottle. For a series that struggled to gain consistent and high-end sales figures, Xenoblade 2 came out swinging, because it released at the perfect time. Unlike Titanfall 2, Xenoblade 2 released on a new Nintendo console. The Switch was gaining massive popularity, but funnily enough, if you remember back to that first year of release for the Switch, there weren't that many games for it. You had like Mario Odyssey and maybe Breath of the Wild, unless you had that game on the Wii U, and there just wasn't much to play on the Switch. So a lot of people, myself included, got Xenoblade 2 just to have something to play. And then they played Xenoblade 2, and they got through its rough patches, that for me weren't even that big of a deal, and they fell in love with it, and the game started to sell a couple million copies. Sure, the circumstances for its initial boost in popularity were a bit of the stars aligning. What kept people in, and what hooked them, was the beautiful world, the amazing characterization, the wonderful story, and the combat once it actually picked up. Xenoblade 2 was also a complete experience. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It didn't require knowledge from Xenoblade 1 to work. It worked as a secular, separate entity. And I loved it all the more for that. And then you had Torna, the Golden Country, which was, in my opinion, one of the best gaming prequels to ever come out. It is S tier, in my opinion, that shored up a lot of the mechanical frustrations many people had with Xenoblade 2, and just produced a story that was tragic and bittersweet at the same time, but it also served as a great recontextualization for Xenoblade 2. It made the entire package a better experience. And then we had the hype of Xenoblade 3. Xenoblade 3, when it was coming out and all the marketing surrounding it, was just cool. But Xenoblade 3 also came out way later in the Switch's lifespan. There was a lot more competition that Xenoblade 3 would have to contend with that Xenoblade 2 just didn't have to deal with. And despite all of that, sure, Xenoblade 3 still hasn't sold as much as Xenoblade 2, but coming off the back of Definitive Edition as well, it sold pretty damn well and was received really popularly. Had some of its issues, not everyone liked the ending. I was one of those people. I've come around to it, but I still have some issues with the pacing and the final little leg of the game. But the package as a whole, the world, the story, the characters, they were captivating, engrossing, pulled people in and refused to let go. It was that diamond in the rough, Xenoblade was. People are always on the hunt for modern masterpieces, games that we can look back to and say, this is one of the highlights of the gaming industry. Xenoblade was that idea. It was that principle. It just had never really gotten the chance or the opportunity to really shine. Xenoblade 1 may have come out on a popular console with the Wii, but the fact of the matter is, most people just didn't play long-ass RPGs on the Wii. The Wii was not a console designed for that. It appealed to a different audience. But the Switch was more of a hardcore console, with casual appeal. So a game like Xenoblade 2, then Definitive Edition, and then 3, had the chance to shine. Well, what about the future of Xenoblade? It is on this jumping off point. It is attached to a rocket ship, and that rocket ship can either sputter and die, or go to the freaking moon. They need to nail the next Xenoblade game. And if there's any group of developers on this planet that I would have more trust in doing Xenoblade 4 or the next Xenoblade game correctly, I would be hard-pressed to think of anyone more than Monolith, who have consistently put out quality game after quality game. The past may have not been the kindest to Xenoblade, but it's kind of like the entire point and idea of Xenoblade as a story. It's all about that next step. With one sure step, we step into a new tomorrow. And we may not know what it holds, we may not even know what Xenoblade will look like tomorrow. They could stumble and fall, they could even produce a game greater than what has come before. We don't know. We simply don't know. But at this point, Monolith have earned my benefit of the doubt. So whatever crazy, wacky idea they come up with, I'll be on board with it, until they give me a reason not to be. What would I like to see in the future? I think there's a few things Nintendo can do to really boost Xenoblade's popularity from here on out. 1. The Switch 2 needs to be a banger console. whatever it's called. It needs to have power behind it. It needs to have the power so that Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 are all backwards compatible for it, but also get a boost to like 1080p 60 FPS, or even 1440p 60 FPS. Keep Xenoblade available. Don't let it be like Xenoblade X and languish and die and wither on a dead console like the Wii U. In fact, possibly, bring back Xenoblade X. That game has all the mechanical features that I want to see in mainline numbered Xenoblade games. Because for what Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 do so well in the story and world-building department, Xenoblade X excels with the gameplay idea and the open-world exploration. Keep Xenoblade being available. They could do a Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition, and there's a lot you can fix with that. Like rein in the gotch, because that's really off-putting for a lot of people. Fix field skills, streamline like blade leveling up, or like the affinity chart, and reintroduce a lot of these later combat mechanics earlier on into the game, so you get into the swing of things way earlier. It doesn't require an overhaul of everything, just a bit of love here and there. Along with some updated visuals, Bob's your uncle, there you go. And then for Xenoblade 4, they've been doing this with Xenoblade 3 if you've paid attention to the actual game mechanics, where they've been like slowly reintroducing gameplay mechanics and ideologies and philosophies from Xenoblade X in both Xenoblade 3 and Future Redeemed, but in different ways. For Xenoblade 4, go all in with that idea. Merge the gameplay prowess and exploration and identity of the gameplay mechanics of Xenoblade X with the storytelling and character development and world building of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. You combine those two ideas, streamline the beginning intro stages of the combat, kind of like what they did with Xenoblade 3 in certain ways, where they got you into the swing of things earlier on and quicker. Let the tutorials be freaking optional, oh my god. And just maintain that Xenoblade identity. And I can see Xenoblade 4 doing better than all the other Xenoblade games. It is so close to a massive breakout success, even more so than what Xenoblade 2 and 3 were for the franchise. It is so close. It is yearning for it. It needs it. It's got to have it. And like I said before, if there's anyone to do it, few are as qualified or as proven and battle-tested as Monolith. To say I'm excited for the future would be a gross understatement of epic, and I mean epic proportions. Also, let's be honest, I think we all understand that the Switch 2 probably won't have a large library of games on day one, unless it's like backwards compatible. If you can get a Xenoblade title in that first year and replicate those conditions that Xenoblade 2 had to succeed all those years ago, that'd be a big plus. It doesn't have to be Xenoblade 4, but just something, like a Xenoblade X Definitive Edition or something like that. Even Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition if you really want to do that. Something along those lines. Have a new Xenoblade title in that first year, preferably 6-month window, if not launch, of the Switch 2, and mark my words, you'll see this franchise soar even higher beyond the sky. Thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.